Good evening, good evening, good evening. I hope everybody had a wonderful, happy Fourth and a wonderful, happy day. And and we are. And I'm thankful for this amazing Sunday. Um, so I need to be honest here. Like, I think honestly that with day five, I think I now am starting to understand that what Myron said that was completely right. And I was completely stubborn about this thing the whole damn time. I have to get off the marijuana. Um, I haven't drank alcohol in almost 2 years. That started in September 22nd, 2024, which is like 2 months and 17 days. Will will be at least like 2 years for me. And let me tell you what I've learned in 2 years that I've really got to know about myself a lot more and stuff like that. And guys, I'm wearing like a no. I'm not wearing a shirt because it is so hot outside in Florida. I'm I have no mattress right now because this is kind of the first part that I'm really get to like integrate pretty much most of the life I have. But I started to understand a lot that that I need to. I realized that that I need to take ownership of my financial habits, and I've realized that every dollar needs a job. And I'll tell you my story from this part. You know, like like last month I created a 30-day no budget dollar plan, and right now right now is completely not in task of what is going on completely, sincerely and concisely. It's kind of hard to understand, but I feel like in June I've wasted money on Ubers, especially my phone bill was like $85 on T-Mobile. Cause boy, woo, it's a lot going on, and also it's a lot of things that is going on in a lot of things. So the first thing I've realized is that I have ADD and Asperger's, and I've realized when I woke up like pretty much at like 9 in the morning, and I was doing these healing frequency move, and I've realized as a 30-year-old man who has Asperger's, like I have I spend so hard that it goes $0 and 0 cents to my name, and what I've realized is that I have impulse spending. Now, the one thing about impulse spending is not really the biggest thing on my part, not really big thing on my challenge, but yeah, just what I've realized, it's kind of a history that I've learned, because with my routine, like I usually spend budget on budget. Now, before the 2 year alcohol free sober stuff like that, now I was drinking, partying, going being a bouncer and all that stuff. Now before it took all away from me. But once I got my unarmed license and my armed license, which is the D license and the G license, I thought everything was straight. Now, like when I got my paychecks from the nightclubs, like Baja's and Bullwinkles, I've realized that pretty much of, of what I was doing with myself. I didn't spend. Well, let's take this back. I did spend drinks before my sober date. I mean, when I was spending drinks, like I would spend when I go to Zingali's, you know, it's a really good bar that I go to and meet friends and meet people, and we always talk a lot. So what I've learned to experience about my own critical self, is that like I realize that like with my comfort habits is that I go to the bar literally every day just to spend money on food. And people can say like, yeah, it's all what they want, yeah, it's all what they need, yeah, it's all they what they whatsoever, and yada yada this, yada yada that. But what people don't understand and whatever they ever got to notice is pretty much about like this life that I have outside of the movement, where it's all going down. Like from there, like from the instinct and the inside out. You know, I spend like a lot of money. I spend a shit ton of money on going to the bar. On going to the bar, like where I spend alcohol. Or spend alcohol. It's like $200 on alcohol, $300 on weed. Most of my money gets shit on by Ubers, cause I had to go to work, go to jobs, do ball halls and stuff like that. It made me realize until 2026 that I got tired of using Ubers, Lyft, you know, because they cost a lot of money, and it it kind of gets like a little bit sicker every day, like day in and day out. Also with my comfort habits as well, I would smoke weed like before I work. I would drink an energy drink before I go to work. And during that time when I worked at Baja's and Bullwinkles, like I didn't start till Bullwinkles until like late August 2024. And this was my big brother, who was my manager behind the scenes. For people who listen to Jordy Hendrix, that's me. My big brother was the manager. I remember he had said in an interview about me that that I was a drug addict, and it took me like a long time um, before when I was in that toxic environment. And I guess it was after the shooting that I've realized where I felt angry and overwhelmed and just burnt out. And most part of that I was disconnected until I realized of the downfall of my money for bars, which I perceptually quit. I told my boss, who was 21 years old at the time, I told him that his company and that bar was a joke. And I called that manager and his dad clowns. And I told him that I quit. I took an Uber 6 days later, and I flew all, and we drove, and well, first they drove me to Okeechobee. That was like in the Emory Center. That's when they first got me off to Pyramid. I came back to Tallahassee, and if it weren't for Ryan, who turned in that paper to Poppin for Tallahassee to Sebring, I'd be all kinds of messed up. I'd be going crazy like hell. But thank God for Ryan who did that. And I just took the offer and I went down to Sebring. And I think personally, like that was actually the best thing for me I ever done, And it wasn't a small win; it was a major win. And that's how I connected right back with my life of God. And people can always say like, "Oh man, like God is this, God is that, yada." No, I mean like what I've realized with my love of God now, like God is a person who can fix everything with with your additions and with your attitudes and with your anger and with your anger problems. Now for me, I have all types of three of these things, and I couldn't I could tell from a lot of people who has hanged out with me. I'd say pretty much in like three, in like probably like in like 4 to 5 years now. I mean like I could understand why. I could. I mean like hell, look at my face, look at my beard, and all this stuff. It was never easy, I mean, I remember 2025. It was actually a dark year where I had to move on from my life. But there's women out there that still like me and all this stuff, and I think personally, like, I waste a lot of money on girls that really, if I was to be honest on day 5, and if I took it like really, really honestly, here's the thing that every dollar has a job, and it reflects that every dollar have a job. Honestly, to take this whole reflection out the whole system and the whole cycle of all this, like I've realized that I've realized I spent money on women, but also like women actually spend money on men, like pretty much on dates and stuff like that. And like I knew there were times I was poor. I knew there were times I was broke, but I always acted like I had a cocky ego. I was more egotistical than myself. Well, I'm gonna say that I was more egotistical than everything. And for me to understand that, it took a lot of like psychology and reality into things, because for me, like I'll be honest here, and people can laugh at me all they want. I had no balls. I had small dick syndrome. I didn't realize I was hanging out with the crew with the security guy. The people look at security look at me weird. Um, they thought I have micro penis personality disorder somehow, and it's kind of fucking weird. But it's the weirdest thing because it, you know because it hits me with my brain not understanding a lot what's going on with my own entire life. It's like, well, it hit me with my own entire life, and it brings me back to like all the afterworks, them grungy 3 a.m. Closing ships at Baja's, them closing 3 a.m. ships at Bullwinkles, them closing 3 a.m. ships at Townships, and also at Potbellies as well. And it brought me to so much stuff that like that I think personally that if I have to look back at my 20s and if I did it all over again, I would personally have to I would personally invested everything at all costs in my 20s, especially in my late teens, because I was a high school wrestler back then. I was a high school wrestler back then. People wanted me at the Tampa Wrestling Club as well, and like for me, like if I was to be brutally honest about with money, life, and reality, I never really invested in myself, and I think it's I think it's really really hard to understand that because that's kind of like my harshest truth with my impulse buying and my impulse spending. I don't know what comes for other things in life, but for me, like I grew up as the scapegoat, the golden child, and the eldest son in like in a narcissistic family system. So my relationship was never with money. It was never just about money. It was about control, about proving something, about numbing something, or about finally. And I felt like the world I owed a win because personally I was mad at the world. Like, and with impulse spending, also with emotional spending, it was it was never my character flaw. It was my coping mechanism because I built it for such a long time ago. Because because in this house where I stay, in my mama's house, where I got called on the police, I've been arrested, I've been in jail, I did a pretrial. The charges were I got charged with aggravated assault. Meanwhile I never hit my sister. I never hit my family. They came at me first. I had to protect myself. But society in Tallahassee views it in a different way. And that's where I started to understand it was never disturbed fairly. And that's where I've learned with all this, I guess, with the whole Bauhaus thing. Well, and that was before the charge that I had. So, I mean, yeah, just, like, with all this stuff, it's basically I felt in a certain way about spending, and I didn't use any amount of budgeting. The apps fix the feel. The apps fix the feeling, and honestly, I grew up watching money used as a weapon, a leash, and a scoreboard, and I didn't just learn to spend in a certain way. Honestly, it's like a wrestling scoreboard, a football scoreboard, whatever. To be honest, I never had financial discipline. I never had any financial discipline in my life, and that's really, it's really not in the way I ever felt in my life. So, for me, I can understand, but now, like, this is a new week. This is a brand new week in my own life where I'm going to go hard in these last 5 months. Now, I may be a dick, I may be saying all this, but I'm being real here. So, if I could understand, I'm gonna give like two. So, if I was gonna start this week to the end of July, I'm gonna start these two habits, and this is an article that I have written on Medium, and it's the 10 ways to stop impulsive spending for the scapegoat, the golden child, and the oldest one who never got to rest. And basically, I needed to rest. So, for number 3, I have to separate identity spending from survival spending. And so, okay. So, this is where my self esteem to how much money they have was. This could lead me to impulse buying and overspending to flaunt wealth or keep up with or even show up with others. And for me being the oldest son, this would prone to this because the roles were built on external proof of worth, and it helps to physically separate my accounts. One for needs, one for Goat 3 identity fund. But I am allowed to spend freely. I never let the two touch, and this isn't deprivation. It's giving the impulse of the room its own. Like the room I'm at right now, it's given an impulse of the room its own. So it stops redecorating the whole house. Like right now on the wall, it's kind of like all brown. You just can't see it because it's kind of fucked in a way. And then like with number 5, I know a lot of people have listened to my music, and somehow I haven't set the monthly list on Spotify. I just read about Spotify. I guess from last weekend. So personally, for me, I'm gonna let grief be grief instead of letting it become a cart. And the reason why I would say all this because a lot of mostly spending and slash impulse spending is actually delayed mourning for the childhood I never gotten. The parent who never apologized, aka my mom. The version of the family that I only existed in my imagination. And, I've kind of realized that mostly like in my childhood years where I had been to the psych wards and the jails and the mental hospitals when I was in middle school, also in college. And, here I am now, 30 years old. So, like, I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna try to sit with the feeling for 10 minutes before I touch my phone, and the person will be still there. So the grief would not. So the grief would not get felt now. It will just wait for the next receipt. And I think personally, this may be a really, really good time to say that because I'm gonna have to interrupt the I finally deserve this because in reality I don't because Let's face it. Because, like, let's face it. What do I deserve all this? Nothing. Literally nothing. And, like, that's why personally I need to have financial discipline in my life. Because, because, like, when you start from zero to, let's say, like 1,000, 10,000, 100K, 100 grand, or even a million, you know, I have to have financial discipline. And this may be not the easiest part, I would say, but this is the one small step I do have to follow in a way. Because I'm taking this one day at a time. Because I've realized I spent money on cigarettes. I spent money on. Let me take that back. I spent money on cigarettes. I spent money on coffee. I spent money on weed. And, and I spent money on the substances. So what I've realized is that, like, every substance that I've used and everything that I've done is burning down my bill. Because no one understands this in a way. So, no one understands in a way. And, that's where, like, I had to track my triggers. And not just the transaction. And my family would say, like, you're living better. You're living a better life. You're living all this. But in reality, I'm not. Because like, my nervous system down hasn't been slowly. It's gone suddenly fast every single day. And it's got to a problem that it's nothing happened. So, and that's why I say personally, this is not a discipline problem. I hope people don't look at this as a discipline problem because, one, if I take nothing from this, the same spiral after an emotional purchase, an impulse purchase, is often worse than my finances for the purchase itself because the emotional spending slash impulse spending, it chips away at self-trust, chips away at low self-worth because it increases the money-related mental health stress and financial regret usually follow right behind it. And regret has its own trigger for the next round. So I wasn't born financially reckless or financially rigid. I was built into a system under real conditions to survive a house that didn't hold me fairly. So that system can be rebuilt. It just doesn't need to be punished. So if I was myself in a way, I personally need to have financial discipline. I need to learn to take ownership of my financial habits. And I now need to understand that every dollar has its job. Because a lot of things does have a job. I was too blind to see it. So, well, that's all for the video I have today and all this stuff. I hope people are having an after 4th. I just hope people do well. All right, peace.